let's talk quickly. So the hot topic is driver testing this week. So you and I, Kel, have talked quite a bit about this. So just for the record, for the people at Fully Equipped, explain, one, the fact that it happens a lot, but two, just explain the process of driver testing. Like, how does it all go down?
Well, I mean, this is going to be an interesting topic, and everybody kind of, it's tough. And I think Johnson Wagner had said it best when he had kind of thrown something out there that it happens more often than the general public would know. And I can tell. I mean, sometimes
Right.
you'll see one of the guys from the USGA or who does the testing on a regular basis. You'll see him at your hotel on like a Sunday night, and you're like, okay, here we go. So we know that, this week we're testing drivers. So I think their ultimate goal is to test, I think almost everybody on tour's driver at least 3 times during the year. I believe that is their ultimate goal. I think to a point, there are some guys that are tested more than 3 times during the course of the year. I can't speak to that, and it kind of just taking them at their word that it's been more than 3 times. And then also what you have when you go across the pond too is you will have the RNA test it. They'll send a list of players prior to the week to us. So we will almost be in charge of bringing their driver over to them at the Open Championship and them testing it, then us taking it back to the player, whether it, if it passed, and then, everything's fine. So the USGA and the RNA have a little bit different way of their testing processes. But there is, first thing Monday morning, if you're on the range and you see somebody walking around, and one of the rules officials that helps out with this situation, if they, they're going up to players early, and testing drivers, it's ultimately going to happen to somebody on your staff. And essentially it's supposed to be random what
Right.
they are doing. But as this is not hearsay, this is kind of factual that if you're the first one out there on a Monday, there's a really good chance that whether it's happened in the last 2 months, your driver's probably going to get taken and tested. Now, the testing process is quite intricate to a point of, and I don't want to be the one to throw blame at the USGA, but there's a point where the level of play for these guys on the PGA Tour, or those that play on the DP World Tour and come over to the PGA Tour, the spots on the face that they are testing, some of them have never seen those spots with a golf ball, unless possibly their child has hit it one time. So I'm in agreement to a point where if it's illegal, it's illegal. But if it's illegal in a spot that's not even accessible by a tour pro, I just don't agree with it. I just don't get it. I get it. I don't get it. It's kind of that kind of double-edged sword kind of silver lining. So it's essentially it's a totally random situation on any given week. You can almost pinpoint the weeks that it's going to happen. Obviously, you're not going to get any driver testing on a week where no trucks are involved. So take like a Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Truckee, all the kind of the concurrent events with some of the bigger events. You're also going to get it early in the year in a signature event. So it could be a Riviera or Genesis, and then possibly again at API and at Bay Hill. But you're going to have a couple kind of in between there. It's I would love to go on, but I think that my attitude on the whole thing will flip to more negative than it is positive.
That's fair.
It's just an interesting process that I don't believe it needs to take place as many times as it does, and I believe there should be some kind of memo sent out to essentially our players or our teams as OEMs to, let us know that these are the people that we are going to be testing this week. I think the randomized part of it, I think it's discouraging to some, because I feel like, yes, they do get tested a little bit more often than others.
That has to be.
Well, one of the comments that's got. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, it has to be extremely frustrating for a player. And I mean, kind of like you're saying, Kellen, you have somebody that kind of trends towards like a high toe impact position, and somebody, oh yeah, I play X ball flight and I hit it within 2 to 3 millimeters of this impact zone pretty much every time. And my driver failed out of the low heel or the high heel or someplace that I'm just never making contact with a golf ball. And that would get under my skin as a player. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And Johnny, sorry to cut you off. I was going to ask the question, like, how is it generally received if your driver becomes non-conforming right before the round one of a major championship?
Well, so yeah, that's the other thing too, and I talked about this with Johnny before, is that they'll never do anything on a Wednesday. They'll always do it on Monday and Tuesday, and that's, I had said to Johnny that it's a little bit unfair, to the point where, the facilities were closed Monday and Tuesday at points where you couldn't essentially work on it, on the range. Obviously on the range, you get the numbers, you get to see the ball flight, but I mean, that's 20% of the driver. Yeah. I mean, the driving range is 20% of how you're going to hit shots. It might be even less. I'm just throwing that out there. But I mean, unless you have data from on-course testing, then you have no idea, because your speed's going to go up on the course. It's just going to be the best way to test a driver or any club is in competition, whether it be a practice round or, during a tournament. So it's tough. And there's some responsibility that lies on us and lies on the player to have, a qualified backup too. A backup, like I told him before, is just, it's not a head just lying in your bag waiting to be put on that shaft just in case something happens during the round. This is kind of I feel better with this head. This other head that I do have is amazing, but I feel better with this head. So, I feel better with this head is obviously, that's the gamer. And then the one you feel really good about, but there's something that you just don't love right now, that is your backup. And then it's cyclical from there. So, if the first one, fails, then the backup's in. Now you're getting another backup. The kind of onus is passed to us and the player to, have completely be ready in situations that might happen like this. So,
gotcha.
So Kellen, the Scottie Scheffler and Xander said this too. Like they should do testing every week, for example, like every player every week. Which to my thing is like, what's to keep players from not just sticking their gamer in their locker every week when the testing goes on and just bringing it back out? I mean, there's too much testing it every week, leaves too much room for fuckery, essentially, for lack of a better term. It's like, you can't test them every week. Is a better solution. And I thought about this. I did this on the Rocco show the other day. Is basically putting some of the onus on the OEMs to kind of ensure, every couple of weeks to test everybody's driver, in-house, just to make sure. And if a driver's at, say, for example, yellow, or, the numbers, pretty close to the red, to start making adjustments there, with the warning, like, hey, this driver, and turning in the report to the USGA, like, okay, this is the report from this week of the drivers. And they're like, okay, well, these two guys are pretty close to the red, so we're assuming you're going to make some adjustments to get that out of play sooner than later. Because then it puts the onus kind of on the player. Like, you knew it was red, you still played with it, you took the chance, you got it pulled. This is what happens, right? Is there a world where that happens, or is that a logistical nightmare?
It would be kind of a logistical nightmare, just because of, just the testing processes. If you're testing it on your say you have, like we have one in the truck, do we test it? If we were testing it every week, are we testing the same that USGA would test it? So if we come back with a number that is
right,
essentially what they would describe as in the yellow, that's a driver that player is going to want to take. I mean, then it's going to mean that it's a little bit faster, right, and we get a little bit more yardage out of it. But is our test going to is it going to correlate to what the USGA their test says? That's the kind of that's the risk that you run by doing that every week. And then, yes, essentially at the end of the day, it is a logistical nightmare, because you're taking time out of player A's day to test it. And then if like I said, I mean, if the results come back good on our side, but they don't come back good on the USGA side, then now you're in a kerfuffle of it's a tough kind of sequence to mitigate to a point. It is what it is.
Right.
Kind of have to deal with it. I just wish it was more structured to a point. And I think in the world that they live in kind of a structured world. I think they should structure this a little bit more according to what the player could do. It's just not. It's not
right.
The random of it is a little bit much.